Well, thank you. My name is Reverend Everett Bell. I'm the pastor of Bethel AME Church in Monrovia, California. Um, I've been doing community engagement since 1998. And there are a couple of things that I'd like to say that kind of dovetails on what Ms. Beiser said, but to give us a broader context of how these issues function in themselves. Let me start off by saying that there was a book written by Mark Gornick, To Live in Peace. And in this book, he makes this statement. He says um, that the inner city is not the problem, but the site where broader forces are at work, constructing exclusion and distance. The inner city is not the problem, but the place where broader forces work together to construct exclusion and distance. And if there's ever been a time to kind of observe that and get a sense of that, it's right now. And so I just want to hold that in the background. I want to hold some tension there as we walk through this process. Earlier, Renee Beiser said, we've been here before. And I'd like to be a little clearer on that because I think it's important to understand that we've been here before. There was an election in 1876. The election was the last election during the period of Reconstruction that followed the Civil War. We had two candidates. One was Samuel Tilden, and the other one was Rutherford B. Hayes. And Rutherford B. Hayes had won the Electoral College. Samuel Tilden won the popular vote. And there was a compromise. There were four states: Florida, Louisiana, South Carolina, and Oregon. Kind of not too far, not strange, but in a sense, it's always the same group of people. That's another conversation. But during this period of time, there was this election that took place, and as a result, there were some disagreements. It led to what we call the Compromise of 1877, in which Samuel Tilden conceded, or the compromise was to concede to allow Rutherford B. Hayes to be the president of the United States in exchange for, among a number of things. One was the removal of federal troops from the South. That ended the Reconstruction. That ended government-sponsored programs. Sound familiar? It led to a return to states' rights agendas and mass incarceration policies. This should not be a surprise to us when we begin to see these things because we really have seen them before. But one of the interesting statements that the compromise lifted up was a respect of the civil rights of African Americans. I'll wait. Well, that didn't necessarily materialize. And in some ways, it hasn't materialized still after all these years. These, and this circles back, it circled back right after the civil rights movement, which led to this war on poverty, which became the war on crime. It became, rather, the war on drugs and the war on crime. And then it ended up being a war on African American communities. We then see another backlash that occurred right after President Obama came out of office. It ushered in the person we have right now. And all of these issues continue to challenge the right to exist and the right to expand of African Americans in this country. And so now here we are. And the question is, what do we do about it? So when we take into context some of the things that Renee said today, I want you to understand something. We have to stop acting like lone rangers. We can't afford to act like lone rangers anymore. We can't afford to operate in a construct of me, myself, and I any longer because it's easy to pick an individual off, but it's very difficult to move an entire community. And sometimes we like to get away from our communities. I want to suggest that maybe it's time, instead of moving away from our communities, to begin digging deeper within the communities where we find ourselves. The only reason the model that she used, that she pointed, not the only reason, but I want to suggest this. One of the factors that heavily contributes to models that Renee lifted, like Compton, for example, is because there are large numbers of people that share the same interest. And when there are people that share the same interest, they share the same language. I think I read that somewhere. Let's see, Genesis 11. chapter 6. The people now are one and they all speak the same language, and now nothing will be withheld from them that they have imagined to do. I think one of the things that we have to begin to think about is to think differently about how we relate to each other, how we respond to each other. Are we interested in drawing together, or are we still acting as if there's a need to move away? And in the need to move away, we find ourselves isolated again. But in the need to come together, we can lift each other up and we have examples that we can share. So when she says, let's get together and call me, she says, call me. You can't call her, but we'll send an email that Sister Najuma will send out. When she says this, this is the example of what it means when we begin to come together and share common concerns and come up with common solutions to these concerns. Number two, so we can't be Lone Rangers, right? Uh, Claude Anderson, in his book, Black Labor, White Wealth, he brings up this issue. He says he argues against looking for jobs and argues for building businesses. He said to me in an interview once, he said, it's a doggone shame. He didn't say doggone, but I have to respect the space. He said, it's a doggone shame that we will send our children to work for someone else, as opposed to building a business that continues to hire our children for generations. And I think that's a very profound statement. But the challenge is a lot of us don't know how to build these businesses. Models that Renee Beiser is lifting up begins to create an opportunity to build these business. You will see in your chat box, I'm gonna shout out to my boy. You will see in your chat box, Reverend Frank Jackson. Frank, someone in the question said, "Well, how do we build a nonprofit?" He's in the chat box. Send him a text. He'll respond with joy in his heart to help you to build a nonprofit organization. Here's the challenge, right? The fact that we can come together allows us to build off of each other's knowledge. And that's the problem that we've run into. Let me give you another one. I need us to understand where we are. And we have to think about Trump-proofing our organizations. We have to begin to think about, how do I protect myself? What am I dependent on? How many streams of income have I created? So if one falls off or one gets reduced, I have others that cover the gap. I know this sounds like fast talk, but it really is significant. Sister Najuma just lifted up an idea about a cart with candy on it. There are simple ideas, but let me give you one, and this is for free. In 2012, we worked with a group of us, worked together to hold banks accountable. One of the things that you may not be aware of is whenever a bank is merging, I got a witness on the line, whenever a bank is merging or whenever a bank is acquiring another institution, you have the opportunity to hold them accountable to whatever they're doing or not doing in your community. Literally, once you write a letter and say, I'm concerned about this particular institution's engagement in my community, and give a couple of examples, they are required to answer you. They are required to answer you satisfactorily before they can move forward. Oh, I just told somebody a secret. I don't usually give away secrets, but someone told me back in the day that the game was to be sold and not told. But I'll just leave that alone. Listen, this is a powerful example because you can hold banks accountable to creating community service agreements, which means they have to capitulate to what you see as necessary for your community. But if there's only one person representing the community, you can imagine the limit of the power that is lifted in that community. But if there's a number of churches or a number of individual organizations or a number of individuals, period, that are speaking the same language at the same time, you can hold institutions accountable to the things that you know that you have experienced that need to be addressed in your communities. Finally, understanding where we are. I raised a question after COVID, and the question was, what did you learn? What did you learn when everything around you was turned upside down? Did you learn to address things differently? Did you learn to diversify the work that you were doing? Did you learn to look at other opportunities and not be satisfied with where you are today? We are in the same place again. And the question will come up at the end of this process, what did we learn? A couple of things I think we must learn. Number one, we must learn to work together. We must learn to work together in a way that supports each other. There's a saying that a rising tide lifts all boats. We have to be rising tides in our communities. Number two, you got to get your paperwork in order. You didn't really think I was going to leave that out, did you? You have to get your paperwork in order. We have too many people that start businesses, but take shortcuts when it comes to organization, shortcut when it comes to structures, and shortcuts when it comes to reporting. Listen, those days are gone. And if you don't know how to do it, it's okay. There are a whole lot of things we don't know how to do, but you have to forge partnerships and relationships so that you can cover yourself. Number three, continue to spend time in prayer. That probably should have been the first thing I said, but I'm going to say it last. Continue to spend time in prayer. Listen, we're in some unprecedented waters right now. You need some help. Amen. You need some help. And I know somebody may be on the line that doesn't believe in God, but it's okay. God believes in you. You need some help because this is the reality that we find ourselves in. And so when we think about it, we need to lift each other up. We need to encourage each other, and we need to march together in the same direction. A house divided against itself cannot stand. And so this is where we find ourselves. And so I want you to think about the ideas that Renee lifted up with the context of what I'm sharing to support the process that you engage in. The answers that we need to these problems are right before us. Let me give you another example. Since somebody mentioned Southern California Edison, Southern California Edison has a supplier diversity program, and it requires today uh, that they spend so much money on minority business enterprises. And one of the things that a lot of African American business owners don't do is they don't get their businesses certified. It doesn't take much to certify it. It really is an easy process. And so I want those of you that are business owners to cover all the bases. Get certified, apply as a vendor to every entity that you can think of, LAX, Southern California Edison, Metro, every entity that you can think of. And then every proposal that comes out that makes sense, partner with someone. Partner with someone so that more of you can work together to build the outcomes that you're looking to accomplish. And I think if we do that with our minds set on change is inevitable. Change is going to happen. The only thing that's consistent about change is change. Amen. And so since we know that's coming, we might get a president next that's worse than the one we have. Amen. What are you going to do about it? What we are left to do about it is focus on those things that we have control over. And the only thing that we have control over is our attitude and the actions that we take in the midst of all of this change. I'm gonna stop right there just in case there's something that people want to say.
Wow, thank you, Pastor Everett. And this has been really, really rich. And for those that are wondering, this, of course, is being recorded. So after we do the final editing touches, it will be up. And you will also receive emails, follow-up emails, so you can go back because so much good stuff was shared. But thank you, Everett, for really breaking down like this step that we kind of put in three steps: partnership, paperwork, and prayer. So thank you for that. And just so much great stuff. So I want to allow people to ask questions. I want to also invite Reverend Jackson, because you mentioned Reverend Jackson as a resource who's on. Reverend Jackson is great at the paperwork piece, which is often a huge stumbling block. So Reverend Jackson, if you don't mind putting your contact in the chat, if you are a church or a small business and you really are serious about establishing your CDC or nonprofit, then you can contact Reverend Jackson, and he has a whole framework. It's work, uh, but he has a whole framework. He can help walk you through to get that done. And this is rich. It is the paperwork is intimidating, Annie. It's only hard. It's not impossible. That's a motto that I had to take on for my own personal self. It's hard, but it's not impossible. And if we can get past it being hard and embrace that it's not impossible, all things can be done, right? Through Christ.
Well, I can tell you this much, Sister Najuma, losing your job is hard,
Come on, being broke is hard.
right? Being broke is hard,
Not eating is
right?
hard.
It's hard.
Absolutely.
It's hard going to work knowing your job is going to be threatened. Listen,
Absolutely.
we've experienced hard before,
Yeah.
and so let's
Yeah.
just get busy in the midst of hard because
Absolutely.
hard is inevitable, and there's no need of sugarcoating that. Hard is inevitable. Y'all ought to write
Yeah.
that down. I think that's it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Hard is.
Amen.
And so so we do have a couple of questions. We have Lily asked a question. How do we start a community development corporation? And Lily, it's paperwork. It's the paperwork that Reverend Everett Bell alluded to. So Coach Frank Jackson has put his email or his website in the chat. So your answer for that question is you need to follow up with Coach Frank Jackson on how to start a community development corporation. There is paperwork, there is process. So work with someone who can actually walk you. That's why these conversations are good, because you get connected with people that can help you get this done. The second question, and also feel free to put your questions in the Q&A. Can you teach us? I've been wanting to start a corporation but need guidance. Oh, okay, that was a follow-up question. So Lily, again, Reverend Jackson is your number one source today for the CDC and anyone else thinking about a CDC. There was a question, I think, Abel, you had a question. Let me go back in the chat. I think I saw a question. If there are any other questions, please put it in the chat or use the Q&A function. If not, I will ask my questions because I do have a couple of follow-up questions. So my first question is to you, Miss Renee, and that is, when you were doing all, because you went through several different initiatives that you started, how did you build those relationships? Because I'm understanding those starts with relationships. So can you offer to all of us, how did you establish those relationships to begin to do the partnership? How did those come about for you?
I just knocked on doors and told them what my goal was and what the vision was. And if they didn't cooperate, I worked around them and kept going.
Amen. Knock on the doors, y'all. We gotta knock on the doors. Everett, what about you? How did you go about building those relationships?
Oh, I just do a lot of networking. I try to create new relationships as often as I can. And I like to network with people that do things different from what I do, differently. Not differently. I don't want people that do the same thing but do it in a different way. I'm looking for people that are in other aspects of something that is connected, so that we can have a conversation that expands our ability together, creates a form of synergy. Um, so one of the things that happened, for example, when I talked about banks was, you guys familiar with a bank called Truist Bank now? It used to be BB&T. And we met with that bank, and I met with the president of that bank, and we did the same thing. Listen, you have this many communities that are underserved and African American and minority, and you don't do a whole lot there. And you can determine this information. And we negotiated a community service agreement right at that moment. And so there, in these seasons, in these moments where it is the only time that we find that banks have to listen to us instead of the other way around. And there are people throughout this state, throughout this nation, that are familiar, that look like me and you and I, and so it's just a matter of sharing. And that example, the more, the merrier. the more representation at various aspects of our community that are at this table and in this conversation, the more effective you will be.
Mhm.
Add
Thank
to that, Everett, it's called the Community Reinvestment Act of 1977. And that basically says you have to offer the credit and services to all communities, low, moderate income communities. You cannot just come in and take our deposits or make dollars off of the transactions that we do and not give back. So if there's not enough lending activity in your area or services that would accommodate the people like you and I in the areas, they must begin to provide those areas. And I will tell you that they've backed up a lot. So now would probably be a good time to put a little pressure.
Mhm.
Yeah, and it shows up in three. It's not only community investment, right? It's also philanthropic activities. It's business lending. All that comes under community investment, but just to pull it out, it's community lending, it's home lending, and it's philanthropic investment. And so
Well,
it captures
it's
in one way or another,
mhm.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. It's under that is your lending, your services, and investments.
right?
Those are the three things that fall up under that. And services could be a new building, it could be an ATM machine, it could be all of the things that we live by day to day. But all of that falls up under there. So if you have an issue, the letter will do. And they do answer those letters ASAP.
Wow.
So
And
I
you
just
said,
got a really good loan by a foreign bank that was not doing so well, and they needed loans from Black and brown borrowers. And it's 2025. I got a 4% interest rate on a real estate loan because I knew where their weakness was.
Mm,
So sometimes you have to learn to become the answer to the
mhm.
weaknesses that corporations are having. And when you address that, you address it with, a MOU or something that could be an advantage to you to
Yeah.
help them execute the goal.
Yeah, Sister Renee, I'm going to send you a letter, and so we can establish an MOU. So they giving away 4% loans. We need to be in that
I know
conversation.
that's
Got
right.
mine.
You,
I got
Miss
mine.
Renee, you said they cover the CRA covers lending services, and what was the other thing?
Investments. Investments.
Investments. Okay. Okay.
Mhm.
So listen, y'all. All of our sessions are all about you getting the information and the tools. If you listen, we can only give it to you. And I would say we gave it to you for free, but that's not truthful because nothing is free. This was not free. We actually are being sponsored by a bank. First Citizens Bank is sponsoring this whole economic empowerment series. So I'm learning to get away from saying it's free. It's sponsored. And so this conversation and other conversations is being sponsored. It's being sponsored because, to Everett and Miss Renee's point, First Citizens Bank, like other banks, they have to respond to these issues and concerns in our community. And they're doing that by sponsoring this conversation. And the point of this conversation is so that other churches and nonprofits, small businesses, you can learn the language, the tactics, the information, and to know how to how to navigate these waters. And we will be sharing, Miss Renee's email, Everett's email. You have Reverend Jackson's contact. So now the next step is for you to follow through. We can't do that for you. We cannot do the follow through for you. We can only present the information. And so again, today is part 2. There's a 3, and then the 4th session is going to be in person. We're doing a summit on campus at USC. So if there aren't any additional questions, and in the chat, thank you, John Hampton, for sharing what you shared about the Federal Reserve. And is this John Hampton from Center of Hope? I'm not sure. If it is, hey, brother. But yes, hey, John. Okay, John is over there managing. Center of Hope is doing great work. That's another church you might want to get connected with. They're doing great work through their California Jobs Initiative. And so there are churches or doing great work that you need to collaborate with, talk to, network. At Everett, you said network. Miss Renee said knock on doors. It's not gone are the days of things just dropping in your lap. We have to go for it. And I want us to say, because Everett, you talked about we've been here before. The name of the game is chaos, confusion, and fear. That is the name of the game, is to confuse, is to create chaos, is to create fear, so we get stuck. But we understand that we don't have to be stuck, and we have past models that both Miss Renee and Everett have shared with us, but we also have what's available in our fingertips today. And I want to encourage everyone to take full advantage of all those things.